Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Little Fella Sports Podcast. And of course, we're here to discuss about the Test match as a whole, the Boxing Day Test match. One could call this genuinely a Melbourne masterclass from India. After being literally in the dumps after the Adelaide Test match, I think not many of us gave India too much of a chance to come back and fight and even go on to win the Test match. I mean, the best we were hoping for, even in the previews and all the videos we made before this, was hoping that India would fight and give Australia some sort of challenge and not just buckle down the way they did in Adelaide. I think India well exceeded expectations in terms of that, and you can say that India thoroughly dominated the Test match from day one till today, and I think it was a very well deserved victory. And of course, we'll be talking a lot about the win and how it happened and all that. But before that, of course, we've got the two guests as usual joining us to discuss about the Test match. Of course, we've got Shreyas and we've got Sanket, who's obviously not too pleased with what the way things have gone today and over the course of this Test match. So, first of all, welcome, guys.
Yeah, hi, pleasure to be here.
All right. So first of all, Shreyas, of course, it's an India win. I mean, before the test, in terms of predictions and expectations, we were saying, okay, last test we competed for the first couple of days, and third day we absolutely just folded
Yeah,
apart. But then in this game, we were hoping that we were thinking that there may be some sort of repercussions in terms of the mentality of the team being really down and the morale of the Indian team not being the greatest. And if they are put under pressure, they may just fold again. But it's just been the complete opposite. From day one, we've taken the game to Australia, been aggressive. Obviously, we lost the toss, which was a huge factor in itself. I mean, if you'd won the toss, you can at least say we have some sort of an advantage. So we started on the back foot, but even from that position, we were brilliant from day one. So what did you make of the entire performance as a whole for the Test match, and how happy are you? I mean, I didn't personally think we'd win this Test
yeah,
match. So, what do you make of the win?
yeah. As you said, no one really expected us to win the test match. Even hardcore Indian fans and Australian fans, both, despite the problems in Australian batting, we still, thought that MCG pitch and Australia batting first, and it would be an easy Australian win. That's what everyone thought. But what a performance, man! I mean, I'm lost for words actually. I was so happy today after uh, we won the test match and it was 1-1. So this is something that we did not expect, and kudos to the entire team management and even the support staff and players. Everything they devised the plan clearly and they executed it to perfection. So yeah, I mean a player like Steven Smith could not score, right? I mean it's such a I mean such a monumental win that's all I can say. So the first innings actually they too changed the game. We took complete control of the game. I mean from it was 60 for 3, right, when Gill got out, 60 or 80 for 3. From there it could have gone anywhere the game. What if Rahane got out or something? But we took control of the game from there. Day two we batted it out, and that's where I think the game changed. It's not like Australia didn't bowl well or something. They didn't give an inch to an Indian batsman, and we were just brilliant in our batting. So that's all I can say. So this was complete performance. I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it was one of those performances where you could say that from day one, India were thoroughly on top. We start off with the ball brilliantly. I mean, I think the first session, the first you can say 10, 15 overs, the openers did pretty well. But after that, Ashwin came into the attack, got the wicket of Matthew Wade, and then we got Steve Smith immediately, and that probably gave India the momentum and belief, saying, okay, I know we've lost the toss, but here we can really put the Australians under pressure, and we pretty much wrapped their innings up in pretty simple fashion. I mean, I don't think the tailenders really whacked that much to wrap them up for 190 odd brilliant effort. And then, of course, the pressure was all the eyes and focus was on India's batting because after what happened in the Adelaide game, you can't not forget about what happened there, and you had to focus on India's batting. And of course, we lost an early wicket of Mayank Agarwal, and there was a little bit of okay, here we go again. But then kudos to the way Shubman Gill batted on the end of day one. He was very positive in his intent and ensure that India reached in a very solid position. And I think we were 36 for one at the end of day one, hoping to push on day two. So obviously, in terms of that, it was really good. And then, as you mentioned, the partnership between Rahane and Vihari initially after the third wicket, and then Rahane and Rishabh Pant, and then finally Rahane and Jadeja. So I think a lot of credit has to go to Ajinkya Rahane and the way he led his team. I think it's not the easiest position to take over as a captain after the manner we lost the first game. And I think full credit goes to Rahane and the senior players as well, the likes of Ashwin, Pujara, Bumrah, who all took up leadership roles and ensured
Yeah.
that the youngsters, because we obviously have a couple of debutants in this game, we'll talk about them also as we go forward. But the way they led in their respective skills, I think a huge credit goes to each and every member of the Indian team there. So in terms of performance, I think it was very, very complete. I know Rahane was probably the outstanding player in terms of the batting, but I think it was a complete team performance as a whole. So Sanket, coming over to you. I mean, after the first Test match, obviously you were elated, but you did mention that it was just one of those days where everything which could have gone right went right for Australia, and you were a little wary in terms of okay, our batting really didn't click, and things may not pan out to be the same in terms of what could happen in the next few tests, and you probably turned out to be right. Of course, Australia's batting failed completely twice. I think on that MCG track, it probably wasn't a 400 and 450 wicket the way we assumed it would be at the start of the test match, but at the same time, it wasn't a 190, 200 wicket either. I think around 300 plus was more or less a par score, and Australia fell well short of par both times. Especially in the second innings, I was very, very disappointed. At least the first innings, the ball was doing a little bit in terms of purchase for the spinners, but in the second innings, I think it was a shambolic batting performance. And if not for the tail wagging, Australia could have even been rolled out before they got to 130, 140. So, what really do you make of Australia's performance, and how disappointed are you? Because after the first Test match, this was a great opportunity to ensure that you can take the game to India and kill the series right here and there.
Yeah, I think as I'd mentioned in the first, after the first test as well, that there was more reason for India to be optimistic about the series after the first test than there was before the series, despite what happened, with the 36 all out. That Australia's batting is was as porous as it was in 2018-19. In fact, you can say it is performing even worse, because even in 2018-19, we did not fail to cross 200 in any of the first innings. So now we have done failed to cross 200 in two successive first innings and barely crossed 200 today, largely due to the last wicket partnership. So yeah, I mean it's not a good look, and yeah, it's the first time since 1988 that no Australian batsman has scored a half century in a test match. It hasn't happened even on tough away tours of South Africa, England, India. Even there, someone has managed to get half centuries. For this to happen in a home test match, especially on the back of what happened at Adelaide against a team that was, without its captain, without a couple of bowlers, and yeah, I mean the team coming on the morale of and a morale boosting win. Yeah, it's a performance that is hard to describe. I mean, as I said, the holes in the Australian batting were apparent even in the first test, but for it to unravel quite as badly as it did here, especially after having won the toss and batted first and with batting without any kind of scoreboard pressure, that is what I think really rankles, and that is why I think this defeat is going to hurt for a long time, and especially uh, with I think the manner in which the top order has collapsed in both the innings, especially in the second innings, as you rightly pointed out, it was a perfectly decent batting surface. And yeah, I mean, in fact, I was mildly hopeful that we might be able to turn it around in the third innings. There was some sort of parallels to the India's Test series win against Australia at home in 2017, where India started off badly in the opening test at Pune, then they got bowled out cheaply in the first innings at Bangalore as well, and then they turned that series around. And in the third innings at Bangalore, where Pujara and Rahane had that great partnership, that was what you were kind of hoping for. I was kind of hoping for from the likes of Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne in the third innings. That third innings, a big partnership in the third innings, and that is what can spark a batting turnaround in the series. In fact, I think we probably produced our worst batting performance of the series in the third innings in perfectly decent conditions. So yeah, there is very little room for optimism. Yeah, today I think it was good to see there's some fight. I think everything was that I have said about the batting. I think I've already said in the previous couple of episodes as well. Today I think it was good to see some fight. Cameron Green, showing some potential. I don't think you can expect him to get big hundreds in this series or play any kind of match winning knocks. But it was good to see him fighting till the last ball, and yeah, he got some runs. So yeah, hopefully he will retain his place for the next test. And yeah, I mean, I think we already talked about the changes that need to be made. So yeah, one would hope that the selectors wake up and you know actually think about the team rather than preserving their personal egos after having sabotaged the team with some ridiculous and disgusting team selections. Yeah.
I mean, I think pretty harsh words, and I think it's pretty deserved in terms of a home team not really turning up on pretty fine conditions. I think this is not too hard even from an Australian perspective. You expect Australia to do much better, and it's not even an Australian team which is under strength, right? You can't have the excuses of what were there in 2018 saying the two main guys aren't there. I know Warner is still missing, but since then Marnus Labuschagne has come up leaps and bounds, and Steve Smith's probably the best batsman of this generation. So you can't really say that. Australia are understrength by any stretch of imagination. So coming out to Shreyas, obviously India made 4 changes. A couple of them were obviously enforced in terms of Virat Kohli heading back home and Mohammad Shami being injured. He's having his broken arm. So there were 4 changes in total. Who came in? Shubman Gill walked in for Prithvi Shaw. Jadeja replaced Virat Kohli. Mohammad Siraj replaced Mohammad Shami, and
I mean,
Rishabh Pant came in
country.
for Ridhiman Shah. Obviously, I think it's fair to say that each one of them had a role to play, and each one of them did their role
Yeah.
pretty fine in different situations of the game. So, how well do you think each of these changes worked, and how much of an impact do you believe it had to bring about this complete 180-degree turnaround for India?
Yeah, I mean, we all, particularly if we follow the domestic circuit, and if we see all of them have performed at the domestic level, right? Even Gill was fantastic in the first domestic season. One game I was watching, I wanted Tamil Nadu to win, obviously, but he 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 was unstoppable. I mean, we had some good spinners in Sai Kishore and Washington Sundar. He played spin really well, and he looked good. And we don't have that much. We don't have that good pace bowling. So the only thing I was worried with Gill was I was worried if he could face Starc, Cummins, and Hazelwood, but he showed it that he can do it at this level too. There's absolutely no doubt about the potential that Shubman Gill has. So deservedly, he got the place and he performed well. So Gill is a big tick mark, and Siraj obviously,
I want to add one thing.
yeah,
I think with one thing with Shubman Gill is, I know this is a pretty big statement, okay, but if you saw even Virat Kohli, for example, when he walked into the international team, you felt that he was little
yeah,
not intimidated, but he struggled a little bit against raw pace. He had this issue
yeah,
at the West Indies tour against the short ball. But the way Shuman Gill plays pace is incredible. I have not seen a youngster play pace like this. Probably since Rohit Sharma from 2007, 2008. I can't remember a young Indian youngster from say past at least 7, 8 years who's gone on and played pace at this level at the age of 20, 21. I think the way he plays pace is incredible. Of course, as you said, his spin playing credentials are very good, and he's a fine player of
yeah,
spin. But at this age, the way he plays pace is too good.
yeah. That's what. So Gill obviously, I didn't know that much because in Ranji Trophy you don't face that you don't face really good pace, right? And I was just seeing the stats also. Even on India A tours, he always gets around 20 or something to pace. So yeah, I mean that was one question mark which I had, which uh, Gill proved that he can do it against raw pace and testing conditions too. He had a bit of luck, but fortune favors the brave. So yeah, big tick mark for Gill, and Siraj, of course, was relentless, man. I mean, I have never seen an Indian pace bowler making a debut against Australia away. Bowled, he bowled so well. I mean, he didn't give an inch to the batsman, and he was rightfully motivated by Bumrah, and he had the support of the team, and he did his job very well. Now, yeah, I mean, even Sherman was talking whether Siraj could replace Ishan, but that's taking it too far now. So, but he did a really good job, and I was pretty happy about Siraj and Pant, of course. We were talking about it in the preview itself, right? He had to be the starter. He was the second highest run scorer uh, last series against Australia, and he did a good job. And he played a rash shot and got out, but he actually did his job. So I felt that that was the crucial part of India's innings. So when
Where
Pant
we
was
got the
playing,
lead.
he slowly took away the game from Australia, and Jadeja carried it forward. And so speaking of Jadeja, of course, uh, this wonderful man. I mean, the stats. I saw some stats on Twitter and as well as on freaking for. I mean, it's astonishing, right? I mean, he has better average difference than Ben Stokes.
His
So,
batting in the
and
last 18,
yes,
24 months
yeah,
has been nothing short of outstanding in Test cricket, and his bowling has always been
both,
a top notch.
both home and away, both home and away, no, not just home. He has performed both home and away, so that's that's brilliant actually. So if he bats and bowls regularly in such a good manner, I think he deserves the number seven spot. So I mean, again, another selection headache for the Indian team, whether to replace if and when Kohli comes in and who to replace him with, because Jadeja has made a statement and he obviously should start. But we'll
I
see
think in
that for
home
another
it
day.
changes a little
Yeah,
bit. And we'd see India play with four bowlers only at home, but I think
in
that's a
home
topic.
we play with two paces. One of them is Shardul Thakur. So that doesn't really matter what we do at home. We'll anyway win. So I mean that's one thing. And one question I have for Sanket, like, do you think pitch played a part for Australia's loss? Because we've seen Australia posting a totals of 500 plus, even with this exact batting lineup. The likes of Curtis Patterson and the other guys, Hanscom, they scored in New Zealand and Sri Lanka tours early 2020 and 2019. Even versus Pakistan, they managed to score 500 plus. So, do you think the pitch actually played to India's advantage? Do you think if classic MCG pitch would have been there for this match, do you think Australia would have won? Or what do you think about that?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say so because I think now when Australia beat India in the 2018 series, the one test that we won was actually on a bowler friendly surface at Perth. On the flatter wickets, India won comfortably. They won at Melbourne. They dominated the game at Sydney. And yeah, I think if you look at the batting lineup, we've struggled even against the spinners. It's not just the seamers that we struggle against. And yeah, I think the major difference between this Indian side and the Sri Lankan and the New Zealand and the Pakistan sides is that India have got a world class spinners, Ashwin and Jadeja. And Ashwin has been absolutely phenomenal. I think he's confounded all expectations from him on overseas tours. I think he showed improvement even in the 2018 series where
Yeah,
he was quite impressive before he got injured. But yeah, he's taken it to a completely different level. And Australia have always been heavily reliant on Steve Smith, against top quality opposition. Even in the 2017-18 Ashes, even though Australia, the final scoreline will tell you that Australia won 4-0. But if you look at the series, there were moments where in each test where things could have gone against Australia, and it was Steve Smith and Sean Marsh at Adelaide, who stepped up under pressure and took the game beyond England. And if Steve Smith had the kind of series that he has had now against England, then there is every chance that England would have won that series too. So I think he has been carrying this batting lineup for way too long, and he was probably due a bad series, and the holes in the batting lineup have been completely exposed in his absence, or rather in his failures. Uh, we saw that in 2018, we automatically assumed that his return would act as a band-aid. I think this series has given a much needed reality check that cricket doesn't work that way. You cannot be so heavily dependent on one cricketer. You just compare it to India, for example. Virat Kohli had a very similar kind of series against Australia at home in 2017, where he averaged something like 7 or 8 in the 3 test matches that he played, and India won the series. And in fact, one of the tests he didn't even play, and Rahane was captaining for the first time ever, and against a very good Australian side that had Steve Smith himself in peak form at
yeah,
that time. and they managed to win the series playing some really good cricket. So I think that just tells you the difference between the two sides. India can cope. They've managed to win in Australia now even without Kohli, so they can win without Kohli even away from home, and they can obviously win without him at home. Whereas Australia can't seem to win without Steve Smith home or away. So yeah, I think this level of dependence was over the last 6-7 years, it was always going to come back to bite us at some point. It did in 2018, and 2 years on, we've got a much needed reality check that things are no different. And whatever happened in the Ashes last year, it was just due to the superhuman efforts of one individual rather than any good team performance. The team is still, I think, in the same position where it was in 2017 or 2016 or 2018. Steve Smith performs well, we do well. If Steve Smith doesn't perform well, then we are a dead duck against the top quality opposition, again, like India, England, maybe not South Africa these days, but South Africa when they were in their prime. So yeah, I think yeah, it's not looking good. I think one can only hope that this acts as a reality check, and hopefully you know the other batsmen step up, and the cricket Australia also need to do, I think, something at domestic level to maybe change the pitches and all that, because it's been a long time now since Australia produced a top class young batsman. So I think things need to change systematically as well at domestic level, so that it becomes easier for the younger batsmen coming through, because so far you know the signs aren't very promising for the future, and the future is only going to get bleaker when the likes of Smith and Warner retires. So yeah, not great.
Yeah, I think in terms of Australia, obviously things in this Test match obviously didn't work well, and long term there are huge concerns over the battle lineup. I think the bowling lineup as well as the backups. I mean, the likes of James Pattinson, Michael Nazar. I think they are fine, able backups, but I think batting is where they genuinely lack players, new players coming through. I mean, no disrespect to the likes of Matthew Wade, but the fact that he's opening for Australia in Test matches in 2020 is a huge question mark. I mean, he was around 7, 8, 9 years back, and from being a wicketkeeper batsman to being dropped to going to Sheffield Shield cricket. Coming back, he played in the Ashes last year and played in the middle order. Now he's suddenly opening. I think it shows a lack of clarity and thinking, or you could even say lack of talent coming through. Obviously, Manus Labuschagne, for example, last 12 to 18 months he's been outstanding. But I think in general, I think there's a huge dependence on Steve Smith, as we mentioned, and I think there is a little bit of lack of quality in terms of guys coming through and taking their opportunities and making sure that they make an impact at the international level for Australia. I want to talk actually a little bit about a couple of those guys who we mentioned in terms of guys who walked in for India. I think Ravindra Jadeja, first of all, I think his performance in the Test match with both the bat and ball was outstanding. I think with the ball, when he didn't pick up wickets, I think he was very economical. And at crucial moments, he did end up picking up wickets. I think the wicket of Matthew Wade was huge. At 98 for 3, it was 98 for 3 when Jadeja got Matthew Wade. And Wade was looking really solid also. I think at that point, I think the game,
Yeah.
you wouldn't say that could have gotten away from India, but Australia could have probably posted a slightly more challenging total for India. The quick fire spell there, I think, changed. He got the wicket of Tim Payne as well, so I think that spell really ensured that India will end up winning the Test match. And his performance with the bat, I think we spoke about it already. I think, but partnership with Rahane was top class, and Shubman Gill and Mohammad Siraj on debut at the MCG Boxing Day Test match. The team is under pressure. You're replacing two guys, experienced guys. I mean, Shubman Gill, obviously Virat's not playing, and Siraj is replacing a very established bowler in Mohammad Shami. And I think huge pressure on both of them. I think the way they took their opportunities brilliant. They turned up in important moments. Shubman Gill played out a tough first days. Towards the end of first day, he played a tough session, and he came out and played a couple of nice shots on second day as well, and still got a pretty decent score of 45. Even today, ensured that there was no hiccups, so there was no issues in terms of trying to chase down the target of 70 and ensure that it was a pretty comfortable sailing for India. And Mohammad Siraj, I think the things he's been through in the last few weeks, I think, first of all, a lot of credit to him. I think to be mentally strong and to perform on debut, being called upon and perform on debut. I think the most important thing with Siraj is he didn't go chase wickets. I think he was very disciplined. I think people have this perception of Siraj having watched IPL and having watched him in a completely different format, which isn't his format. I think it's not fair at all. I think Mohammad Siraj has been a top class domestic performer for a number of years, and there's a reason why he's been able to come to Australia for the first ever time and go and perform at this level. I think the most important thing was his discipline. He got his wickets obviously, and the wickets were more a byproduct of the way he bowled throughout his spells. I think he kept he ensured that Australian batsmen were in check, and he basically hardly gave any freebies away. And I think Siraj and the way the likes of Bumrah and Ashwin guided him through the Test match, I think they deserve a lot of credit. I think Ashwin once again, I think he's picked up 11 wickets in the first two Test matches right now. I think Ashwin, the bowler, has been criminally underrated by a lot of
Yeah,
people over a period of time. I think this series, he deserves this kind of series where he genuinely gets praised, because I think Ashwin's been a world class performer for now what 9 years, I think. And India will find, when he does call it quits in the next 3 or 4 years, I think India will find it really, really difficult to find a top class spinner like him. And I think he deserves a series like it. There's this perception that he hasn't done the greatest away from home, but obviously, okay, I can understand that you may not feel that he's performed to his potential, but at the same time, you have to look into context also, the way India's bowling around him was, or the situations, or the context, and he's had his fair share of injuries. So touchwood, he's been absolutely fit this time, and he's made a difference. I think the way he's kept Steve Smith in check, even after the Test match today, I think Steve Smith come out and told that against spin, generally my intention is to make sure that I am dominating, and I'm taking the game to them. So I think the most important thing is Ashwin's not allowed that. Even that before Smith got out of Bumrah yesterday, I think every time Smith faced Ashwin, you felt something was going to happen. With Smith, you never
yeah,
get that feeling. I think that was the biggest change I felt. With Smith, you always feel like, is this guy ever going to get out? He always looks at it. He always looks at, he looks in a position where you can say, guys, how are you going to get this guy out? That's the most common feeling with Steve Smith. But the way he
he was
faced during that spell,
trying to get out.
outstanding. I couldn't. He was basically rattled by Ashwin. I've never seen Steve Smith in all these years like this. And as you can see in the last 14 Test matches, his average been outstanding in the last 3 years. And even in couple of games in England in the 2018 series or the Australia series, whenever he played before he got injured, I think he was very good. And I hope he goes on to play the next couple of Test matches, and of course continues to make the impact he's made. Because for me, I know Bumrah has been outstanding, but I think the standout bowler for India this series definitely has been Ravichandran Ashwin. And the way he's outperformed the home guy in Nathan Lyon. Oh, Nathan Lyon, world class bowler. He's picked up 390 wickets in Australian conditions for a reason. But he's comfortably outperformed him, and I'm really, really glad personally for the way Ashwin's performed. So, Shreyas, coming over to you, obviously, top class performance. No question about that. Lots of confidence for India going into the next game. From what we heard, it's likely to the third test is likely to be held at MCG only. What kind of so you would you consider the fact that the third test is also happening at MCG to be an advantage for India? And also, in terms of course changes, I think Rohit Sharma is expected to be available for selection, and there is a rumor going around that Umesh Yadav, who obviously pulled out due to a calf injury, he is not expected to play the third test either. So, in terms of changes, and how much of an effect do you think the fact that we are not playing in SCG but playing at MCG makes for India? And same applies for Sanket once Shreyas is done with his words.
Yeah, I don't think the venue it plays a larger part in what we do actually. So the wickets, I mean, you can't predict how it behaves, right? Like we predicted a flat pack here at MCG, and the wicket was completely different. So that's what I'm thinking, that venue doesn't play a large part in this. But the thing that Warner is back, and for them, and obviously they'll make some change in personnel, and that might actually play to Australia's advantage. And I don't think how Rohit will fit in. Probably I probably think he'll replace Mayank Agarwal, but I don't want him to replace Mayank. I mean, he's such a solid bat. He had a slight change in technique which is affecting his game today. That's been pointed out in every TV channel or Cricket Buzz or wherever you see. So that's one change I think they'll do. I don't think Vihari should be dropped from the side. I mean, he's been outstanding in the away tours. I think he plays only away, right? I mean, and he has an average of above 40 or something. So I don't
To get
think,
a home game.
yeah, right. That's what I'm telling. So for such an outstanding player, in the gap of two test matches, we shouldn't drop him. So we'll see how it pans out. Obviously, I think the likely change would be Rohit for Mayank, but I'm not really confident about the next test. But the thing is, this team has given me hope. that I can wake up at 5 a.m. and watch the test match. So, so that's what, without getting disappointed too much, I can at least watch this match. So we'll see how it turns out. This win in itself is a huge win with a full strength Australia team and a depleted Indian side. We beat them at their home. I don't think it ever happens like that for the Indian team. Even with the second string side, we beat any side easily at home in test. So kudos to the Indian team. We'll see how it goes in the next match.
Yeah, I think in terms of the other change, I think if Umesh does is ruled out, I think we'll pretty. I'm pretty sure we'll stick to the
Training,
five here, where Jadeja will play at 7. I think it'll be Navdeep Saini who will get a debut. I think he's
yeah.
already he's part of the squad, and I mean I don't know how well I'm not as confident with Saini as I was in last season.
Rahane was still in the press, right? I mean, Umesh is coping well or something. I
Yeah,
think he should be
Umesh.
back there. Mind is right.
No,
So
but in India's ITK, Bodhi Majumdar has confirmed that Umesh Yadav will not play the next Test match. So
he
I
told
think
August selected. So I don't trust the source a lot right now. So Rahane himself told in the post
I
match
mean, if Umesh
press.
is fit, then great. I mean, but in case Umesh doesn't make it, I think he'll be signing. With signing, I'm not as confident as I was with Siraj because I think Siraj had a body of work in domestic cricket and
Yeah,
red ball cricket. But I think I'd rather play Saini than play Natarajan. I think these guys who want Natarajan are probably seasonal cricket fans who probably don't really distinct between red ball and white ball. It's a completely different game. Natarajan hasn't even played too much Ranji. So yeah, I think the other change we talked about was obviously Rohit Sharma. I think Rohit, as Rahane said, Rohit is back with the Indian team from tomorrow onward. So I think Rohit will play. I think the fact that he's travelled all the way, there's no way they bench him after he's made all this quarantine and all that. So I think Rohit will play. The interesting question is who he replaces. I think the way Shubman Gill played, I think Gill will retain his place. I think it'll be incredibly harsh on whoever he replaces, whether it's Mayank, Vihari, or even Gill. I think all three have shown and performed before. Mayank, I know he's had a couple of lean test matches, but pretty much since the start of this test career, he's been pretty flawless. He's been thoroughly consistent. I think it'll be incredibly unfair if Mayank does get benched or it doesn't play the next game. Same applies for Vihari. I think we already mentioned that he doesn't play the home games and all he plays is the away games. So I think it'll be incredibly unfair if
but I
Mayank
think
also
the
has the
same
same.
applies to Rohit too. Because see, we they don't look at it as home and away, right? So they look based on the performance and on form. Rohit is as good as Mayank, but I feel that Mayank should be given an opportunity. But it will be unfair on Rohit too if he misses out. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
think
how.
okay, if obviously the change is happening, one change is happening. If Rohit's fit, he plays. So I think it won't be Mayank. I think it's going to be Vihari who misses out. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's still there's a pretty solid break between the next this game and the next game. It's only on the 7th of January. So Sanket, finally, what are the changes you're hoping for ahead of the next Test match, and what really do you think will actually happen in terms of changes for the Australian team? You're on mute.
All right. Yeah, I think David Warner will probably be fit, based on what Tim Payne has said today. Although, Justin Langer said a couple of days ago that, he still has to go through the process. So I'm not completely sure yet. Will Pukowski has been passed fit, by the medical staff, but whether they actually risk him or not, I think that remains to be seen. And yeah, I think Joe Burns has to go. I think I've spoken enough about him. And yeah, it's almost unfair on him now to pick him. I think if he plays any further tests in the series, then I think that could probably be the end of his career. It could be anyways, but I think that would probably be the final nail in his coffin if he continues to play in this series against this bowling attack. But yeah, I think Warner probably comes in for Burns, assuming he's fit. And I reckon that might be the only change. I think they might just give Travis Head another test because he's someone that Justin Langer rates very highly. They've invested a lot in him in the past. He's been vice captain at the test side. He was vice captain just a couple of series ago, until they switched back to the one vice captain formula. So yeah, I think he'll probably want to give him more of an opportunity. He's been in good form in the Sheffield Shield, so I reckon he might just get another test, and they might just wait on Pukowski. If Warner is not fit, then yeah, I reckon maybe one of Harris or Bukowski comes in to replace Joe Burns at the top of the order, because I don't think anyone, and not even his own family, can probably justify picking him at this point. So I think that might be the only change. If Travis Head does get dropped, then yeah, I think you could probably see Warner open with Bukowski and Matthew Wade move down the order. Although personally, I would prefer to keep Wade at the top and have Bukowski coming in the middle order, because I think that would be a much better position for him to bat, rather than throwing him to the wolves against Bumrah up front. And Wade has actually looked quite impressive at the top of the order. I think he's played the moving ball quite well, and he's shown some potential in a position where we've struggled to find good openers. So I would probably like to stick with him there. But yeah, let's see what they do. As long as Joe Burns does not play the next test, then I might have something to look forward to.
I think, as you mentioned, I think it's got to a point where Joe Burns, you're not doing any favors to Joe Burns by allowing him to continue either. And I expect Australia to make the change, whether or not Warner is fit. I think Marcus Harris is also part of the squad. So if Warner isn't fit, probably you could see Will Bukowski or Marcus Harris take up his spot in case Warner is still not available for the next game. So with that, I guess we've come to the end of the show. I think it's been a very good day for Indian fans. I think after what happened in the last game in the last week. I think it was one of those days where it was one of the horror days, as we described even in the last episode. One of those days where nothing went right for India. But whereas this test match, I think pretty much everything has gone to plan from start to finish. India thoroughly dominated it, completely deserved the win. And I think it is one of those special historic wins which Indian fans will cherish and remember for a very, very long time. But obviously, the series is very much alive, 1-1, all to play for in the third test. It's probably going to be at the MCG. So I think India will be very confident heading into the game. There is a pretty significant break. I think we're not playing for the next 7-8 days. So I think there's a lot of time for Australia also to reflect and look to ensure that they come back stronger, make any changes they need to make. So I think it's going to be a very interesting last couple of games. Hopefully the series is alive heading into the fourth test match. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot to Shreyas and Sanket for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. As usual, do like, share, subscribe to the channel. And I'd like to wish each and every one of you a very happy new year, of course. I hope you guys have an amazing year and lots of success in whatever you guys do. So please do like, share, subscribe to the channel. We're very, very close to 200 subscribers. So it'll be great if we can hit 200 before the start of the new year. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot. I hope you guys enjoy the show. And thank you to Sanket and Shreyas. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Anirudh. Yeah.
Happy New Year. Yeah,
Happy
thanks.
New Year. Yeah.